Frankenstein, The Rights of Artificial Intelligence, a presentation by Sarah Bailey. In an inquiry concerning political justice, William Godwin outlines his philosophies of the justice, duties, and rights due to mankind. He defines justice as moral duty, which is further defined as that which benefits the most people. Justice prefers that which is most valuable, he says, and this applies unilaterally to both the worth of decisions and persons. He says, every view of the subject brings us back to the consideration of my neighbor's moral worth, and his importance to the general weal as the only standard to determine the treatment to which he is entitled. Based upon this premise, it is every person's duty to contribute to society as much as possible, always keeping the good of the whole in mind. For Godwin, the line between duty and rights is thin, with duty dominating overwhelmingly. He writes, "Duty is the treatment I am bound to bestow upon others. Right is the treatment I am entitled to expect from them." Just as an individual is bound to dedicate his life to benefit society as a whole, society as a whole is expected to benefit the individual. However, since this is not true when the individual's need does not coincide with that of the whole, this is not a unilateral right. The only right truly reserved to him then is personal judgment. An individual has the right to judge for himself what benefits society, and he has the duty to act upon that judgment accordingly. He says, "For that purpose, each must have his sphere of discretion. No man must encroach upon my province, nor I upon his. He may advise me, moderately and without pertinaciousness, but he must not expect to dictate to me. It is the right of each man to decide what is just and unjust, and it is his moral duty to act upon these decisions." Descended from 2 generations of dissenting ministers, Godwin grew up with a heavy religious influence. His dearest ambition as a young child was to become a minister himself, and his games often centered on giving pretended sermons. Despite his father's opposition, Godwin did become a minister and began practicing in 1778. His career stalled and then ended as Godwin transformed his beliefs and turned to writing. Inspired by Edmund Burke's Reflection on the Revolution in France, Godwin published an inquiry concerning political justice in 1793 to much success. Propelled by his accomplishments, Godwin turned his attention to becoming more socially adept and popular, soon after which he began an affair with Mary Wollstonecraft. Wollstonecraft, a former governess and an author, was known for her revolutionary calls for women's education reform on a national level in her work, A Vindication of the Rights of Women. In 1797, William and Mary discovered Mary was pregnant, and they decided to marry. 11 days after giving birth to a daughter, her namesake, Wollstonecraft died from complications in childbirth. In an atmosphere of grief and financial strain, Mary Shelley's life began. Thanks to her parents' prominent influence in an era of reform, Mary Shelley grew up surrounded by some of the most significant poets, philosophers, scientists, artists, and politicians of the time, including William Wordsworth, Aaron Burr, and Sir Humphrey Davy. She pursued education fearlessly and with brilliance, and her studies included most, if not all, of her parents' publications. She drew many of her ideas from human rights, equality, and justice from her parents' work. After her elopement with then-married Percy Bysshe Shelley at age 16, Mary became even more fixed in the world of the finest authors of the Romantic era, including Lord Byron and Charles Lamb. Eager to appear worthy of her birthright as a true child of Romanticism, Shelley found inspiration for Frankenstein during a friendly ghost story writing contest in 1816. Encouraged by Percy and Lord Byron, Shelley published the book in 1818 anonymously to great success. Despite her privileged intellectual surroundings, Mary's life was filled with tragedy and death. Though she never knew her mother, she felt her influence and her absence most keenly. In addition, her stepmother was jealous of Mary's attachment to her father, and this tension caused her father to send her away to boarding schools. Upon her elopement, Godwin disowned Mary and did not reconcile until her marriage to Percy in 1816. Her half-sister and Percy Shelley's pregnant wife committed suicide 2 years after Mary and Percy's elopement, and Mary herself suffered the loss of 4 of her 5 children in the space of 7 years. In addition, Percy Shelley, a less than devoted partner and uninterested father, dallied in other relationships after their elopement to Mary's consternation. In 1822, soon after her last and most dangerous miscarriage, Percy died in a boating accident. Worn out by grief, Mary spent the rest of her days more quietly, continuing to write short stories, novels, and nonfiction, and traveling with her only surviving son, Percy. Shelley died of cancer in 1851 at age 53. Godwin's principles of justice, duty, and rights are all at work in Mary Shelley's masterpiece. Though they can be applied to Victor Frankenstein's actions with interesting results, this presentation focuses on its application and resulting connotations to Frankenstein's creation. Victor Frankenstein's creation is not quite a man, nor is it quite a monster. Both body and soul being created by a man, it is its own species of being, a new type of life, artificial life. Frankenstein fails to consider his duty towards his creation from the moment he conceives the experiment. As he begins the creation of a human being, he considers only the thanks this new species would owe him. No father could claim the gratitude of his child so completely as I should deserve theirs, he says. After abandoning his creation with breathless horror and disgust, Victor wishes to be free from the life he has bestowed, and tries to put his experiment behind him. Although he bemoans the tragedies of William's and Justine's deaths, he connects it only to his curiosity and lawless devices, and not negligence towards the creature. It is the creature himself who first introduces this idea. Sentient and intelligent, the creation demands a claim on the eternal justice of man, and speaks of the rights owed him by his creator. Although Frankenstein feels that the creature has forfeited his right to justice by his murderous action, he also feels for the first time what the duties of a creator towards his creature are. He consents to make a companion for the creature, feeling that there was some justice in his argument, asking himself, "Did I not as his maker owe him all the portion of my happiness that it was in my power to bestow?" Although this demonstrates a promising amount of personal responsibility, we later see that Frankenstein still does not recognize a personal failing on his part in abandoning the creature in the first place, nor is he permanently persuaded by the creature's pleas and logic, declaring himself guiltless of any crime. He regards his creation and his promise towards it as a curse. Indeed, before he commences to create the companion, he reveals that he feels more morally bound to protect mankind from the creature's wickedness than he is to secure the creature's happiness. When he realizes that creating the companion could pose an equal risk to human safety, he destroys his work. Despite the threats and commands of the creature, Frankenstein no longer perceives any sort of obligation towards aiding his creation. The only duty he feels, the duty he pursues until his death, is to end the life that has damaged and destroyed so many others. Frankenstein never considered that an artificial life, no matter how visibly repugnant, could have a claim upon the rights of man, nor did he consider that the wickedness demonstrated by the monster was a result of withholding these rights. Yet the creature saw these truths with great clarity. Appealing desperately to Frankenstein's humanity, the creature cries, "Remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but am rather the fallen angel, whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. I was benevolent and good, misery made me a fiend. Make me again happy, and I shall be virtuous." By denying him justice, compassion, and respect for the creature's personal judgment and the needs from the moment he drew breath, Frankenstein determined his creation's villainous course. This failure ultimately causes the downfall of his creation, his loved ones, and himself. The themes of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein are still prominent in much of today's sci-fi media. After an absence of 20 years, the Star Trek universe returned to television screens in a 1986 reboot, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Roddenberry's direct influence in the new series, which was most pronounced in the first season, steadily declined in the following seasons due to poor health. However, Roddenberry's original concepts of the Star Trek universe remained strong throughout the new series. Set in the 23rd and 24th centuries, both Star Trek series provide a forum for applying political ideals and evolved moral standards in a world where poverty, discrimination, and everyday violence is virtually unknown within the enlightened Starfleet Federation. According to Susan Giberman's article on Gene Roddenberry for the Online Encyclopedia of Television, the original Star Trek was the first science fiction series to depict a peaceful future, and Roddenberry often credited the enduring success of the series to the show's positive message of hope for a better tomorrow. Roddenberry continued to build on this foundation through Next Generation, with a new generation of characters that operate more peacefully than Captain Kirk's rather swashbuckling crew. Though the crew of the Starship Enterprise on Next Generation arguably operates on a higher moral playing field than most television characters, they frequently grapple with the same problematic ideas Godwin, Mary Shelley, and the rest of mankind have been facing since mankind's birth: the application of justice, the delineation of rights, and the binding contracts of duty. One way these issues appear is through the presence of its own Frankenstein's monster, Commander Data. Made in the image of his creator, Dr. Noonien Soong, Data is the most advanced android in the Star Trek universe, one that has not been replicated successfully since Soong's death. The development of Data's character centers on his desires to advance beyond mechanical limitations, to find his own sense of humanity, an effort frequently curtailed by his inability to experience emotion. Despite his emulation of mankind, society does not always view him as a person with a claim to rights. In episode 9 of the second season, Commander Bruce Maddox, a scientist, desires to disassemble Data so that he may learn from it and construct more. Despite Data's objections due to Maddox's incomplete research, Maddox refuses to recognize Data's right to choose for himself, calling him the property of Starfleet and denying him the rights of the sentient being. After establishing Data's sentience in a legal hearing, which Maddox defines as intelligent self-awareness and consciousness, Captain Picard exclaims, "Starfleet was founded to seek out new life. Well, there it sits, waiting." In response to Picard's argument, the judge decides in Data's favor, saying, "Is Data a machine? Yes. Is he the property of Starfleet? No. We've all been dancing around the basic issue. Does Data have a soul? I don't know that he has. I don't know that I have. But I have got to give him the freedom to explore that question himself." The discussion of the rights of artificial life continues in Season 3, Episode 6, in which Data constructs an android and claims it as his child. Starfleet views Lal, the child android, as an asset to be studied rather than a being protected with rights. Admiral Haftel of the Starfleet Research demands to relocate Lal to be analyzed and educated in isolation as a technological step forward in the development of artificial intelligence. Captain Picard refuses the order, again defending Data's right to exercise his moral judgment. While stating his hope that Lal may someday choose to join Starfleet and in some way repay it for all he has given him, Data defends his moral duty as a parent, saying, "I have brought a new life into this world, and it is my duty, not Starfleet's, to guide her through these difficult steps to maturity. No one can relieve me from that obligation, and I cannot ignore it." Although Lal's death, occurring shortly after this confrontation, prevents the audience from knowing if Picard's and Data's arguments ultimately swayed the Admiral's views, their defense and reasoning seem to adequately establish that any sentient life justly deserves to exercise rights and duties as fully as humans. Commander Data inherited Frankenstein's legacy, as Frankenstein inherited William Godwin's legacy, a legacy of seeking to understand how to apply justice, exercise moral duties, and reserve unalienable rights and liberties in every situation, in every society, in every era, even in every form of sentient life. Mankind has always debated these questions, and we always will. Although Godwin envisioned a world of perfect, equal men in political justice, it seems mankind's progress toward that ideal can never be realized. However, this does not mean the effort is fruitless. As Data wisely instructed Lal, "I realize it is the struggle itself that is most important. We must strive to be more than we are, Lal. It does not matter that we will never reach our ultimate goal. The effort yields its own rewards."